Hi, okay, this is Olwale, and I want to speak briefly on the second installment on the three evils destroying Nigeria from within, or the three viruses eating up Nigeria from within. And the second virus I want to talk about is corruption. Corruption. Um, Here are some useful definitions of the word corruption. Number one, dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. Of course, bribery, corruption, embezzlement, and all of those. Second definition, the process by which a word or expression is changed from its original state to one regarded as erroneous or debased. That is, when a record, a legal document, is tampered with. So you have synonyms of such sort of corruption as alteration, falsification, doctoring, manipulation, forging, adulteration, debasement, degradation, etc., etc. And the third definition we'll talk about, and last one, is the process of decay or putrefaction. For example, the bread turned moldy or rotten with corruption. When you keep a bread after a week or two, never mind the saga that broke recently, but normally a bread after a week or two becomes stale, it becomes moldy, it grows mold and becomes dangerous to health. And this is the aspect of corruption that we're focusing on here, and I'll provide reasons imminently. So, from these foregoing three definitions, corruption in the context used here in this video transcends mere stealing, misappropriation, looting, embezzlement, or the diversion of states' funds or resources into private use by public servants or officials of government. That is the commonest understanding of corruption in our environment. Once you talk about corruption, people's minds or immediately, switches to looting of treasury and all of those. That's part of it, but like as you saw, it's not just that. So I want to emphasize the third definition earlier referenced. That is the process of decay or putrefaction. That is the process of decay or rottenness, degradation. The example I gave, that is a bread that turns moldy and rotten, or even food after a long time, after a month or so. Even if you keep food in the fridge, it loses its original savor or taste. And the synonyms of this sort of rottenness or putrefaction or corruption includes pollution, contamination, corrosion, degradation, poisonous, etc., etc. Now, there are three forms of corruption. No, sorry, there are about five different forms of corruption that I want to highlight here. Number one, moral or values corruption. Moral, ethical, or values corruption. Second, economic and financial corruption. Third, political corruption. Fourth, religious corruption. And fifth, judicial corruption. Now, I intentionally put moral or values corruption first for a reason. Nations hardly are destroyed solely by external forces. I mean, Russia has been bombarding Ukraine. Russia, a superpower, nuclear-armed state, has been, bombarding Ukraine, less militarily endowed nation for over 3 years now, and yet Russia hasn't won. It's almost a stalemate in that war that's been going on. Likewise, the recent 6 month or 4 months conflict between both the combined forces of America and Israel versus Iran. They didn't win. In fact, America lost that war. It was handed an awfully, an awful defeat. That's not the Spain Donald Trump is giving the war, but America lost. Now, nations are destroyed essentially. So, like I said earlier, nations are not destroyed solely because of external attacks. Nations are destroyed essentially when there's a near total values or moral degradation and pervasive corrosion of such a nation's social norms, mores, and ethical foundations. Therefore, needless to say, a society without this ethical, moral, or values foundation is akin to a human body without strong antibodies. So, the situation of HIV patients who eventually develops into full-blown AIDS simply means the antibodies are totally overwhelmed, and so all sort of opportunistic diseases, attack the bodies, and eventually such people die. So, such a nation that has no moral foundation, no values on foundation, what you see manifest in such a nation includes the following. Um, like in Nigeria, specifically speaking, some of the utterly stunning visuals, of the open trading of votes in the recently concluded Ekiti governorship polls. I mean, we saw openly trading, buying and selling of votes, money exchanging hands for votes. I did not see as much as a whimper, an outcry by government officials, by society leaders, by religious leaders. Nobody said anything. It is normal. It has become normalized in our environment as the standard behavior. That is a society that is manifesting full-blown AIDS virus, eating up the system. Another example is students buying grades in tertiary institutions. Also, parents paying ghost students to write exams for their awards during WAEC, NECO, or JAMB external examinations. Also, examples include policemen extorting money, from citizens and going further to kill some of this in certain instances. Examples also include civil servants inflating contract sums, sometimes astronomically, and nothing happens, and so you have a thousands and thousands and thousands of abandoned projects all over the place, but humongous sums in contract sums have been paid. Now, you also have youth. Our youth, Nigerian youth, have become scammers, pimps, commercial sex workers, under various guise, forgers, drug peddlers, etc. Of course, I cannot forget, Nigerian youths have taken to the bushes, becoming bandits, terrorists, kidnappers, and the likes, insurgents, etc., etc. So, the other forms of corruption, that is economic and financial corruption, political corruption, religious corruption, and judicial corruption, are indeed the natural, consequence and logical fructification of a catastrophic collapse of Nigeria's moral, ethical, and social values. What do you expect? A building that has no foundation is going to collapse. So the foundations for any society is the morals, ethical, and values of such a society. Without this, eventually the nation collapses. That's where we are in Nigeria. So as I conclude, moral corruption is perhaps best illustrated as cancer cells devouring its host body from within. So what is the antidote or solution to moral and values collapse? Three simple words. Truth, fairness, and justice. Truth, fairness, and justice. So, do we speak truth in Nigeria? We don't speak the truth. We like to save in terms of perspectives. But truth is constant. There are no perspectives to truth. Truth is constant. There is only one universal truth. There is day and night. There is winter, there is summer, there is autumn, there is spring. Heaven and earth will never change. For as far as heaven and earth remains, the seasons will remain, day and night will remain, black and white will remain. So truth is a constant, universal, spiritual essence. The more we play, dice with truth as a society, calling black white, calling justice injustice, justice, we will never make any progress. And then when I talk about fairness, I'm not just talking about, equity, but I'm talking about an insistence on merit. Fairness extends to include an insistence on merit. The World Cup is ongoing. France blew away Sweden just yesterday. If France had chosen the third 11 or fourth best team to face Sweden, they would have lost. But France chose the best 11 available to them to face Sweden, and they blew Sweden away in the round of 32, 3-0. So if a nation refuses to put its best foot forward, choosing people on ethnicity, on sentiments, on bigotry, and all of those, we will never make any progress. That nation is going to collapse eventually. And then the final point, justice. Of course, look at it. I'll talk more about this in the third installment. Lack of justice. But beyond lack of justice, look at what our judiciary, the caricature, the utter shame and reproach our justice system is bringing to our nation. The collapse of our justice system. Can I shock you? I know the Bible fairly well, and I'm in awe of the reverence the Holy Book has for these three simple words: truth, fairness, and justice. In fact, the Bible states in several instances that God's throne is founded on truth and justice. The throne of the Almighty God is built on the foundation of truth, equity, and justice. Now, until we as a people, Nigerians, commit to these three spiritual tenets, we deceive ourselves and continue on our present downward trajectory. Thank you for listening, and bye for now. Bye.